Hello, everybody.
Peter, thank you. You're there. We were trying to reach you. No problem.
Hello.
Everything's right.
Oh, hi. Hello, everybody.
Hi. Okay, so we are able to start. Welcome, Peter, to the call.
I'm sorry. I think I must have missed the invitation. I saw your email and then I had to dig it up out of my
Okay,
inbox.
but that's fine. You're on the call now, and we are ready to start. There are a lot of people there. I hopefully, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So welcome all back again, and thank you so much for giving us a second chance to promote this new working group on fetal pheno and genotyping. There were about 90 people on the call on Tuesday, and I'm really happy to see that over 40 people had made it again today. So no long introduction from my side. Of course, we will record this webinar as well. Last time we have heard and discussed Gesanten's project from the Netherlands on exome sequencing and phenotyping. And while during his talk, the lights went out in Farmington and Peter Robinson was no longer on the call for his presentation. So he is now here. And I keep my fingers crossed that the power does not fail this time. I already introduced him on Tuesday, but some people might not have been on the call. Peter Robinson is a pediatrician, medical geneticist, and he was working for 20 years at the Charité in Berlin. He was the leader of the computational biology group there until 2016, and he is since then professor for computational genomics at the Jackson Laboratory. He will now introduce his project of extending the terms of the human phenotype ontology to include prenatal phenotypes. I guess that this time we can make a live Q&A session because there are, well, not too many people on the call or discussion round directly after his talk. But you may also use the chat tool in Zoom if you want. So Peter, I'm not sure, are you ready with your presentation or do you need a little bit of time?
No, I'm ready.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry that our power, we live in a rural area in Connecticut in the middle of nothing, and our power has gone out about 5 times this year. Because of COVID, I'm working from home, and I think I was after 5 minutes, everything just went out. Nobody knows why, but it was the entire neighborhood. I will share now, and I will. Okay. I'd like to present briefly the plans for extending human phenotype ontology for prenatal phenotyping. This is one of several efforts that we have to extend HPO. This has been an ongoing project since we introduced HPO 13 years ago. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to HPO and how we use HPO, and then I'm going to discuss our plans for the prenatal phenotyping workshops, which are just getting started right now. Ontologies, just briefly, are ways of classifying domains of knowledge. They have 2 main use cases. One is just for data exchange, and it's kind of simple. If you want to exchange data between databases or studies, then everybody needs to use the same identifiers. And I'm sure you've seen many instances of ontologies being used in this way. That's pretty simple. There are a few details that if you would like to read about this, there's an article there that we wrote a few years ago with Tony Brooks and I. Another aspect of ontologies is their use as a backbone for bioinformatics, And so ontologies provide us with a computational model of a domain. And in this picture here, we see there's a node. This is a term in an ontology that represents Fanconi anemia. And what's been happening over the last 20 years or so in the open source ontologies scene is that we have agreed to use essentially a standard way of connecting ontologies. And so what you see here really are about 6 open source ontologies forming a model of a domain. So Fanconi anemia is a disease. It has phenotypes. So these are HPO terms. This is what I'll be talking about. This is obviously just a selection of the phenotypic abnormalities that you can see in this disease. Other diseases shown here can also be characterized by a subset of these terms. There are other terms for testing, for assays, for environmental influences, for genetic subtypes, gene functions, and so on. And so the algorithms that people in the field are writing are starting to use this graph of knowledge in various ways. So here's a slide about HPO. The HPO has been around since 2007, and we published it in 2008, and we were contacted by a number of groups soon after that who basically said, well, we've always wanted to use an ontology for our database, but it's not good enough yet. Can you expand it for our disease area? Can you correct the following errors? And so that started a tradition of workshops, and we've had about 50 workshops ranging from maybe an afternoon to a week with various specialties. Most recently, immunology, ophthalmology, pulmonology, and we're just starting a workshop with fetal medicine. And so this is basically enabled a couple of things. So when HPO started, it had roughly 5,000 terms. Now HPO has 16,000 terms. So this means that HPO is by far the most detailed terminology of phenotypic features available. And so some groups have essentially looked at all of the clinical ontologies and said, if you take all of the other ones together, you would get about 1/4 of what there is in the HPO. Another thing is that HPO has been designed for sophisticated bioinformatics, and just briefly, the HPO starts with a general term on the top, phenotypic abnormality. It branches out to various organ systems. The organ systems branch out. And so, for instance, deeply set eye is a specific kind of abnormal globe location, which is a specific kind of abnormal eye morphology, and so on. So there's a hierarchy that is in its deepest places about 14 levels deep. The terms are also defined computationally with reference to other ontologies. And so, for instance, the eye is defined with reference to an anatomy ontology, and this is the term for eye. There are other terms that are defined on the basis of cells, of biochemistry, of gene function, embryology, pathology, and a few other things. So this means you can immediately link your clinical data to data from gene ontology and many other places. All of this time, we've been very lucky that a lot of people have joined us, and these are papers from our group. But most of them, if you look, have lots of co-authors from other institutions who have collaborated with us in various ways. And so we've been very lucky that HPO has become a community project. Briefly, what is phenotype? Well, we probably should have called HPO human phenotypic feature ontology. The word phenotype is very broad, but what we mean is a sign, a symptom, a lab finding an imaging abnormality. And these are sort of the individual manifestations of disease. And those of you who are clinicians will know that, sometimes you can, you just recognize a disease by its gestalt. So, imagine a child with Down syndrome or neurofibromatosis comes into your office. You don't need to think much about it. A few exceptions maybe, but generally that works. But for the 20,000 or so rare diseases, that you cannot gestalt all of these diseases. And so what most people do is to write down these individual findings and look them up using some computer system or some literature system. And that's what we've called computational deep phenotyping. And so that's what HPO supports. This is the stuff that a HPO term has. It has an ID like this, a name or a label, a definition. Many of the terms have links to PubMed articles, synonyms, cross-refs to other ontologies. And so this is what people use HPO for. HPO has become the de facto standard for genomic diagnostics using phenotypes in rare disease. And so essentially, if you're seeing a patient, you will code the phenotypic abnormalities using HPO and enter them into a computer system. The computer system will then use those terms to compare the manifestations of your patient with database models of diseases and other things. Our tool is called Exomizer. It's freely available, and we think it's the best one out there. There are also lots of other academic and commercial tools that use HPO. Many people have used HPO to sort of connect the clinical data with genomics. Here we did a study that showed that TAD boundaries and enhancer adoption are a common cause of phenotypic abnormalities in copy number variant disorders. Finally, people are starting to use HPO in electronic health record systems, and HPO is going to be supported by a number of the players in this area. So that was just a brief introduction to the HPO system. We were contacted a couple of years ago by Ron Wapner, who is leading a network of researchers in prenatal genomics, and said, we'd love to use HPO, but we'd like to extend it for the prenatal phenotypes. And so Catherine Gray wrote a very nice review article about our ability to evaluate the fetus and just how much better phenotyping is in recent years. And essentially, this means that HPO needs to catch up with the progress in the field, not only prenatal sonography, but other modalities such as MRI. A lot of the majority of the data that's in the HPO now refers to postnatal phenotypes. We also need to extend our system to represent the prenatal time course better, because often you have data from more than one, let's say, prenatal sonography, and this could be used by algorithms, but it needs to be coded in the correct way. And so we've developed frameworks for this and are starting to use this to annotate data for the system. So if you go to the website, HPO website, so if you just go to Google and enter HPO, you should find the website at the top or close to the top, and you can explore it. And currently there are about 150 terms that are specific to prenatal development. And here's just an example. Some of the terms are can only be observed prenatally. Lemon sign is example. There are many others. Some of the terms can be used equally well for prenatal and postnatal findings. And in this case, we would not make a separate term for fetal postaxial hand polydactyly. Another thing just to mention is that sometimes prenatal abnormalities such as cystic hygroma often are associated with a related abnormality postnatally, but we would not use the same term for this because it's not the case that every time you have a fetus with cystic hygroma, a child with develops a web neck. So I've been talking about the ontology terms. The HPO project also has disease models. And this is an example for an autoinflammatory disease. And the disease model, it consists of a list of HPO terms that patients with this disease tend to have. And in many cases, we have additional data for these lists. So for instance, in this case, there was a study saying that 3 out of 3 patients with this disease had episodic fever, that this phenotype had infantile onset, so month 2 to 12 of life, and that it was triggered by cold. And so algorithms can use this information about how frequent a feature is. So in some cases, a feature might be present in, let's say, only 1 out of 20 patients with some disease, but that's still more than you would expect from the population background. So that was a brief introduction to that, and this is just some examples of how well it's possible to annotate prenatal data now with HPO. And so while I was preparing the project, we looked at a number of case reports, and this is a typical example. In this case, we could annotate about 80% of the features, but we didn't have a term for anhydramnios or for sonographic non-visualized bladder. And so we're, here's another example that it was about 30% of the terms could not be annotated. This is these are terms that are essentially only called in fetal medicine. And so I'm going to stop showing the slides and just start to talk. So we have for that reason, we've been collaborating with Ron Wapner and Jess Giordano, who is in his team, to sort of form a working group, and about 70 people have joined the group. About 30 of these people have joined our first workshop. And so in this first workshop, we have just given people an introduction to how to work with us. I'm going to share my screen again just for a second to give you an idea. So it's gonna this is our website, and essentially this is a page in the documentation how to collaborate with us, how to suggest new terms, and we do this via this is a GitHub page. This is something that is used by many bioinformaticians, and so we have had a typical. Let me show. So this is a typical new term request. So Patty Morgan said, I don't see the prenatal double bubble sign. So please make a new term for that. Here are some synonyms. Here's a definition, a PubMed ID to read more about that. Here's where you should put it in the ontology. So this would be the new parent. And that's pretty good. And here's, I think I just was looking at here. So this was another term request that I thought needed some discussion, because the proposed term name I thought was I mean, I knew what this was intended, but this is sort of a jargon that people in prenatal medicine would understand, but maybe not other people. I thought it probably should be called so Doppler peak systolic velocity instead of just Dopplers. And so what we are going to be doing now is really to look at at various parts of the HPO, like this, and so this is currently there are many more terms that we would want to add here to completely capture this, and so we're asking colleagues to essentially go through this and suggest new terms in this way. And so we'd be very happy to welcome and any people of your group who would be interested in this. We have a number of projects like this. We actually just got a reasonably big NIH grant to support this, and we are also we're going to be working on 10 different areas in this way. Another area that might be related to your group is cerebral palsy. So we have a grant to look at that, and we are going to be doing a lot of work in that area too. But yeah, we've the HPO has been very grateful and very lucky that a lot of people have collaborated with us in this way. And so if this group or people would be interested, we would definitely welcome you. So I'll stop there and take any questions.
Thank you so much, Peter, for this overview. Thank you. Well, I believe that we could come up with and help you. And we just have to discuss how we should do it. Will you organize some more meeting, organ specific, or should we contact you directly, or how would you propose that we should go on?
So the way we're doing this for prenatal is that we have developed 8 subgroups, such as cardiovascular, placenta, etc. And for each of those subgroups over the last month, we've had introductory sessions where I've basically shown in a little bit more detail how to work with us. So what we're actually asking you to do. I would suggest that if your group is interested, that we have another introductory session like that. If people can stay on until 9. I could try to just do that right now, and then you could just join these subgroups directly. And if anything is unclear, then we can set up another Zoom. Would that be good?
Well, I, for the moment, have time. I don't know for all the others on the call.
So I would say we are so grateful for people to work with us. We know how, I mean, I used to work as a clinician. I know how busy things are. We will do whatever is necessary to work with you.
Okay.
Typically, this requires some introduction.
Yeah.
So what I would propose is, if you like, I think we have another 20 minutes. I will give a short version of the introduction that we had, and I will ask our program manager to send maybe you, Andreas, a link to download material and essentially we have a questionnaire, and this says, what is your area of expertise? Okay. Where do you work? Do you know about sonography, MR, or pathology, etc. And we would add you to these groups. I can say when I was in in Europe, we had lots of wonderful workshops together where we would meet in the morning, have 1 or 2 hours of introduction, and in the afternoon we would walk around and work with people one-on-one to just introduce them to the software and talk about issues. It's hard to do much more than an hour or so on Zoom before people just get tired.
Okay.
Certainly I do. And so it's a little bit more difficult, but I think it's better to try to do things in smaller groups and in 1 hour Zoom at most. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, that sounds great. So I think that if you could give the short introduction now, because perhaps it's easier for a lot of people to stay in the call than to log in again and find another time slot. And also the webinar is recorded. So on Tuesday, we had 19 people on the call. Today, we have about 45 people on the call.
Yeah.
And then we should meet again in smaller groups. I think this is a nice idea. And I hope that a lot of people here will agree. So if you are prepared to say something, that would be fine.
Okay. So I'll just go on. I will ask Monica, our program manager, to send you, Andreas, some material that is we have. I guess there's two important things. So our governance, basically, I think the important things are that the HPO is free for everybody. So it's free for companies and for academics. We do not ask anybody, we do not ask you to register. So all of this work will essentially be freely available. We provide sort of attributions. So if you suggest a term and its definition, and you want to provide your ORCID number, your researcher identifier, or some other identifier, we add it to the term. So that's something. In terms of publications, we have had regularly invited people to join our publications about the resource. So every 2 or 3 years, we write a sort of a review article. And we have also, I'm sure that we will, as a group, we will write something about the prenatal phenotypes. Typically, our group has been sort of middle authors on specialist papers like that. We're happy to do anything. We have enough papers. We really just want to provide a good tool that will be enough reward for us. But we will figure something out, and basically anybody who has contributed more than an hour, let's say, we're very liberal about inviting people to be authors. So I'm sure there will be a paper with maybe even up to 100 authors. If some groups have said, no, we want to have our own smaller paper. So for instance, we just had a paper from the epilepsy community who have worked with us. So all of that we would do. And so we ask you to register on our system so that we know who you are and that we can include you in this. And so we will send around a link to a questionnaire where you can put in all of your data. And we have a document about the governance that basically says be nice to each other, and everything will go into the public domain, as I mentioned. Okay, so for let's just say the example of anhydramnios. So sorry, if I want, let's say I thought that anhydramnios was missing. First, I would go to the website and just search for it. So I'm not finding it. Well, I'm finding it here in a disease. So I'm just going to go here and I'll look and explore this, and I say prenatal and birth. Well, okay, this is annotated to, the disease name says anhydramnios. This is annotated to oligohydramnios. Well, obviously, anhydramnios is a severe form of oligohydramnios, but somehow I get to the right general neighborhood. So abnormality of amniotic fluid. And I would, before I made the term request, I would look here, look at the other terms. And I guess one thing that we've discussed on other calls is, do we actually need a term for anhydramnios, given that there is a term for oligohydramnios? And I think the consensus was it would be good to have another term, because even though they're sort of two ends of a spectrum, it's not all. I mean, it's good to specifically say that a certain case had anhydramnios. So if I was going to do this, I would just look at some of the other definitions and see how they were defined, and then I would go to this the website. So if you can't find this GitHub page, this is how to do it. Go to the documentation, how to contribute to HPO. And so this will be in the online in the documents that we will send you. So you don't have to write all of this down. But if you go here, before you start with this, please read this page. This is a more detailed description of what I'm saying now. And here's anatomy of a good term suggestion. So this is sort of what we're asking you to provide. To do this on GitHub, this term here, this is, you first need to get an account on GitHub. This is free. It will take you maybe 15 minutes to get an account and just understand how to do this. If you would like to collaborate with us but do not want to use GitHub, that's also fine. We would then ask you to essentially send us a Word file, but we would add your request to this tracker. This just means that we'll keep track of it. And in some cases, we'll have discussions. So I showed you here that I got this suggestion, but I didn't just want to put it on because I didn't think it was clear enough. Our rule is that, if you're from another medical discipline, like let's say you're a gastroenterologist and you're looking at this term, which is, fetal cardiology, you should be able to understand it. So if you just say elevated Dopplers, well, it sounds like it could be velocity, but it could also be, some other something else. So I basically came up with a suggestion. What we're also going to do in this project is to try to get 2 fetal medicine specialists to look at every term. That's why we're asking you to tell us what your specialty is. And so essentially when I add this tag, then and so if let's say if I added my tag here, that's me. And if I said here's some message, if I said comment, I would get an email saying, hey, somebody just wrote a comment about this term. Can you please take a look at it? And so this basically just keeps things from getting lost in your inbox or in somebody else's inbox. And there's a record of the entire conversation. And so when you get a GitHub account, you're going to have some, you're going to have some name like this that you'll have to assign yourself. I think there's already several million users, so it might be hard to get a name that you like, but that's the hardest thing. Okay, so let's say you wanted to make a new term for anhydramnios. You would click here on a new issue, and these are sort of the things that we're hoping to get. So you could say, well, you already have a term for this, but I'd like to add a synonym. The reason for having synonyms is that text mining programs can use those synonyms to find the terms. You can say for instance, for what do we have here for polyhydramnios? Well, there wasn't the this is a relatively short definition. But maybe you could add another sentence to provide some more explanation, or you could add a PubMed reference for people, if you know of a great article for people who don't really know what this is but want to read more about it. So you could add that there under textual definition. Subclass relationship, well, okay, everybody makes mistakes. So let's say we had the term polyhydramnios under, abnormal liver, and you saw that. You could say, no, actually that belongs underneath abnormality of amniotic fluid, and that's where you would suggest this. The other thing, and just general typos, so if there's a misspelling, the other things are sort of more for bioinformaticians. The main thing we're asking people to do here is add terms. So if you wanted to do that, you would click on Get Started, and you would say anhydramnios, and you would say, what is the preferred term label? Well, usually these are going to be the same. Are there any synonyms? Well, you would add them here. You could say amniotic. You could write some definition. It's usually good to look for an article about that provides some additional information, and let's say we thought that this article provided a good introduction to anhydramnios for those who don't really know what it is. Well, you could you could add that definition here. It sounded like this article thought that severe oligohydramnios was a synonym of anhydramnios. I'm not aware if that's generally accepted, but let's say you're the experts. If you thought that was true, then you could you would enter this here, and you might say you might explain that here. Oligo is generally known as anhydramnios, something like that. And you'd say where to put this parent term. So please just copy this, and put it here. And then so basically, if you, I'm not going to submit this because I just made this up, but if you submit this like this, you would essentially create an issue like this. So this is another good term request. So there are various synonyms. There's a definition. There's a PubMed ID. Where should we put this? These links here. So the fact that, let's say, this syndrome is associated with these HPO terms. This is possible because with another program we sort of put these links in. This one is actually hard because our data, Cellvega, I think there are something like 20 different forms of that, if I'm not mistaken. And this is I think this is a phenotypic series in OMIM. So we'd have to go and look if this is true of all of the subforms, but we would add this term, and then this would appear on here. I'm going to stop for a second. Is that making any sense?
Well, for me, it makes a lot of sense, and it looks like it is very user-friendly. Thanks you for the presentation. There's one comment in the chat, or he said thanks again, and Giz added yes. Are there some questions to Peter? I think we are over time, but we can use the last 4 or 5 minutes for any questions. If there are, please feel free to ask. So Tanya Ati unmuted her mic. You want to ask something?
Yes, So first, thank you very much for this huge work, and which is daily useful for all the community. I had a question about histological sign, because in prenatal diagnosis you also have, of course, fetal pathology examination after termination of pregnancy, and I think this is still lacking. There are still many histological signs that are missing. I saw that it was implemented regularly. I was looking for some HPO signs that were absent just 2 months ago, and they are already there now. So thank you. Still are missing all the placental histology.
Yes. I think it would be very good to add that, and you know, you can't always use histology at all stages of the diagnostic process, obviously, but it is something that we want to have, and so what I would suggest is that we will send around sort of an online link for you to register and just say, I'm interested in histology, for instance. And if you know it's, let's say, placental histology, just let us know that. And then we will suggest that you join the corresponding work group. If everybody has sort of understood how to work with the system today, then essentially you're as far along as everybody else right now, and we're just about to sort of ask people to go through the HPO in detail, and so yeah, that would be wonderful. One question: is gestational age of occurrence taken into account? So for the diseases, yes. So we would say, when was a certain feature observed in a certain disease? The disease annotations that I showed are mainly taken from PubMed articles. I didn't show you, we have a system for entering disease annotations like that is similar, that I could show it at another time. But in the first part of this project, we want to concentrate on the terms. If there is a characteristic age of occurrence for a certain term, such as, you know, I don't know, persistent patent ductus arteriosus, well, that is a very characteristic lifetime, right, where you can have it. You can't have it prenatally because it's supposed to be open, and you know, probably you're not going to have it when you're 50, and so on. But that for us, that usually goes with the disease. So in any case, I think I have to run at 9. But
Peter, sorry,
we will do our very best to answer questions, and we're very grateful that you came today. And so what we ask people to do is try to make a first new term request, or to, you know, even to say, I'd like to extend this definition, I'd like to add a synonym. This will test your knowledge of how to use this GitHub system. And once we get started, we're going to expect that everybody, you know, knows how to use that system, or tells us, I'm not going to use the system, I'm going to use Word, but we'll just have to make sure that everybody is comfortable with working with this. And so the best way is just to try to make one new term request, or add one synonym, or one comment. And if you could do that next week sometime, that would be wonderful. And we are going to be starting to organize the continued work. So we will we would like to start sending out emails, let's say next Friday, or maybe Monday in 10 days is better than Friday. So if you could please get back to us next week, I think it's already relatively late in Europe, but we will send this email to Andreas, and if Andreas could send it to your group, I don't want to send everybody a big email, but if he could send it on Monday, then you'd have, sort of 5 days to think about this, and just let us know. And if you'd like to join, we will put you in these groups, and then love to work with you.
Okay, that sounds good. You can send it to me. I will forward it, I guess, also to Claire, please, because she has the mailings list. We will send out your information to all center speakers and to all who have registered in the survey with mail address, meaning all the people on the call, I guess. Claire, I guess the survey is still open, and if someone wants to register, he can still put his mail on the list. And then hopefully we will come back to you with a lot of new people working, helping you. And there was one question from Yves that perhaps you could still answer. He wrote it in the chat. Could you precise how many collaborators from which field of background expertise would you look for? I know that you are looking for all people working in the prenatal field. It could be geneticists, it could be ultrasound specialists, it could be pathologists, radiologists. We are looking for people experienced with MRI. So have your preferences?
In our experience, some people come to a workshop for 1 day and that's enough. Some people have worked with us for literally 10 years and there's everything in between. And so we're very open. We think our project will always benefit from another opinion or another bit of knowledge. And so if any, we try to make this also just a little bit fun and enjoyable for people. And so, if you think there's somebody who would be interested in this and like to contribute either a little bit or a lot, that would be wonderful. We haven't really organized this, for instance, according to country or anything. It's been usually people just get together and talk about this. And the rule is essentially if somebody comes along next year and says, let's say we add a term now and it's wrong. Somebody could come next year and say, oh, that's wrong. Can you please correct it? And that would go onto the tracker, and it would be public. And so, but we haven't had much more organization than that. We might, now that we have, HPO hasn't really been well funded in the past, so we actually now have a pretty good NIH grant that's just starting, and that might allow us to have a little bit more organization. But to be honest, we haven't really had controversies. It's, people, it just kind of worked out reasonably well like this.
Okay, so thanks again to you, Peter, for the presentation and for your time. I guess it's 9 o'clock in Farmington. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here in Germany. I will send out all the stuff to all the people. Again, I said it on Tuesday, we have also some basic data we would like to know from all the groups. If you are already doing prenatal exome, how prenatal diagnostic is organized differently in Europe, in the different countries, and so on. We are preparing a survey for this. And there was some positive feedback on the last case conference about on the last webinar about the case conferences, and we will come back to you with a proposal how we could organize this for the fetal case conferences. If you have any ideas on that, please do not hesitate to send me an email. I think my email address was in the invitation. So we are much over time, but it was a very good webinar. At least I had the impression it was a good webinar. I thank you all for attending and for your patience, especially to Giz and Peter for their talks, and really special thanks to Claire for supporting and organizing both meetings. So enjoy the Friday afternoon, and if you can, enjoy your weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye then.
Bye.